There was laughter. Not mine. Not ours. Just hers. It drifted through the thin wall like smoke. Delicate, curling, impossible to catch. She hadn't laughed like that in front of me in months. I sat on the edge of our bed, fully dressed at 2:47 a.m., holding a grocery receipt from 3 weeks ago. I don't know why. I just needed to hold something that still had a timestamp. On the other side of the wall, her voice rose again, playful, younger. She was using the tone she used to reserve for when we'd stay up late watching dumb cooking shows and rating contestants like we were Michelin inspectors. But now, it was for someone else. I counted the seconds between her bursts of laughter. 7, 13, 2. Inconsistent. Unpredictable. Like the past 6 months. I had asked her, 2 days earlier, if she still loved me. She looked up from her phone and said, "Don't do that. That's all. No yes. No no. Just don't." She used to be allergic to silence. Couldn't stand it. Used to hum while brushing her teeth just to fill the air. Now, I hadn't heard her speak more than 12 words in 25 days. Yes, I counted. I even wrote them down in my notes app. The last one was receipt, when she asked if I had it for the headphones she bought and apparently returned. I tried to make myself believe this was just a phase, that we were just passing each other in the fog and eventually we'd collide again. But that night, the laughter wasn't fog, it was a flare. Who was on the other end of it? I never found out. I didn't want to. I couldn't. Instead, I stood up, walked downstairs in the dark, barefoot, careful not to make the floor creak like it always did near the fridge. I placed my keys on the kitchen counter with a soft clink. I stared at them for a few seconds longer than I needed to. There were no goodbye texts. No confrontation. No dramatic exit. Just keys. And the sound of her laughter getting smaller behind me as I opened the door and stepped into the night. The door didn't slam. It didn't creak. It didn't make any dramatic sound that might have said someone just left your life. It just clicked shut. Quiet, final, like a book closing itself mid-chapter. I stood outside for a moment longer than I meant to, the night pressing against me like wet cloth. No bag, no plan, no idea what I was even doing. Just a phone at 4% and a pocket full of lint. I started walking because staying still felt like surrender. Every step down that empty street felt like both freedom and failure, and I wasn't sure which I was supposed to lean into. Halfway down the block, I looked back. Just lights off. No curtain movement. No silhouette peeking out. She didn't come after me. Not even a text. Not even a "where are you going?" But that's the part that haunted me. I'm pretty sure she already knew I was gone before I even touched the door handle. I ended up at a 24-hour gas station a few blocks away. I sat on the curb out front, staring at the vending machine, glowing like some sad altar of sugar and neon lies. I hadn't eaten in maybe 10 hours, but I couldn't bring myself to care. That's when I remembered something small. A week before the silence started, I had bought her a coffee mug from this random pop-up art market. It was handmade, deep forest green, with a crooked little handle and her initials scratched into the glaze. When I gave it to her, she looked at it, smiled faintly, then placed it in the cabinet next to the blender. Never used it. Not once. That damn mug was still there the morning I left, sitting in the same untouched position like a decoration at a funeral. So here's where things started getting weird. While I was sitting outside the gas station, I unlocked my phone to order an Uber. In the top corner of my notifications, something caught my eye. An email. From an address I didn't recognize. No subject line. Just a single line of text. "She's not who you think she is." I sat bolt upright. It wasn't from a spam address. No sketchy URL, no promotion, nothing obvious. Just a clean, almost sterile Gmail account. I stared at it, rereading the words over and over until they didn't even feel like English anymore. Was this some kind of joke? Or worse, was it meant for me? I clicked reply. Typed, "Who is this?" but couldn't bring myself to hit send. I don't know why, but something about it felt like stepping into a trap. So I just let it sit there, open, glowing, unanswered. I didn't sleep that night. I ended up at a budget motel that smelled like wet carpet and bad choices. I stared at the popcorn ceiling for hours. That email burned into the backs of my eyelids. Who sent it? How did they know? What did they know? The worst part wasn't the silence anymore. The worst part was the idea that maybe I had no clue who I'd been living with at all. I hadn't planned on going back to the house. Not ever, honestly. But something about that email had scratched its way into my brain and refused to let go. I spent the next day aimlessly drifting. A coffee shop, a public library, a parking lot behind a strip mall. But every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was that single sentence, "She's not who you think she is." It repeated like a heartbeat, syncing up with every breath until the lines stopped feeling cryptic and started to feel personal. By evening, I cracked. I told myself it wasn't about her. It wasn't about crawling back. It wasn't even about revenge. I told myself I just needed to grab a few things. A hoodie, my charger, maybe that dumb green mug she never used. Something small, physical, to remind me I was real and that this whole thing wasn't just some surreal breakup dream that hadn't ended yet. I parked 2 blocks away and approached the house on foot, like I was sneaking up on an animal I didn't trust. The porch light was off. No car in the driveway. I still had my key. The lock clicked open too easily. The house smelled the same, lavender and lemon, the essential oils she always overused. Everything was quiet, neat, untouched. It felt like walking into a showroom version of my old life. Same furniture, same photos, but lifeless, staged, like she'd vacuumed me out of the space and no one noticed. I moved quickly, grabbing a few clothes and stuffing them into a Trader Joe's bag I found under the sink. I didn't even realize I'd gone into the office until I saw it, her old work laptop. The gray Dell she used when her MacBook was charging. I'd forgotten it even existed. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. At first, it was locked. Same password it always had, Lana 1989. I typed it and held my breath. It logged in without hesitation. The desktop was almost empty. A couple spreadsheets. A folder labeled tax stuff. A Google Chrome icon at the bottom. I clicked it. Her last open tabs were boring. Zillow listings, Pinterest boards, a recipe for oat milk banana bread. Nothing strange. But when I opened Gmail, the auto login filled itself in. And there it was, not her main email, but some alternate account I didn't recognize. That's when I found the trash folder. I wasn't expecting anything. Maybe some spam, a deleted newsletter or two. But then I saw a thread. Dozens of messages. Deleted recently. The subject line was rental agreement, Midtown. My heart started pounding. I clicked. The emails were between Lana and someone named Jay Hendricks. They'd been discussing a lease. Not in our neighborhood. Not even in our city, but 90 miles away. A loft apartment in an arts district she never mentioned. The kind of place you move into when you're building a new life. What shook me wasn't the lease itself. It was the language. Let's keep utilities in your name for now, just in case. I'll move the boxes over gradually, so he doesn't notice. He's still emotionally frozen. I doubt he'll ask questions. Target move-in date, July 12th. That was 3 weeks ago. She was planning this. Calculated. Quiet. Surgical. And then I saw the attachment, a scanned copy of the lease agreement. 2 names. Hers and someone else's. But it wasn't Jay Hendricks. It was a name I knew. A name from my life. A name I hadn't heard in years. Someone I trusted. Someone I thought was long gone. And that's when the buzzing started in my ears, like static flooding my skull. I slammed the laptop shut, grabbed my bag, and got the hell out of that house like it was on fire. Because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just betrayal. This was an operation. And I was the idiot in the center of it who never saw the trap being built around him. It took me 3 tries to read the second name on that lease. The letters wouldn't register properly at first. My brain saw them, but refused to compute. You ever see a name that doesn't belong in the context it appears, and your whole nervous system hiccups? That's what it felt like. Elliot Bray. If that name means nothing to you, I envy you. To me, Elliot Bray is the guy who nearly got me fired 7 years ago. The guy who shared a cubicle wall with me when I was still working tech support for that startup that burned through investor money like it was confetti. He was charming in the way toothpaste commercials are, clean smile, shiny shoes, always a story to tell at lunch. Everyone liked him, especially my wife. Yeah, they met once, at the company's sad little holiday party. Lana and I had only been married for a year then. I introduced her to my coworkers, and Elliot, being Elliot, laid it on thick. Complimented her earrings, said she looked too sharp to be married to a guy like me. Laughed that smug little laugh he always had. I brushed it off. He was like that with everyone. But a week later, someone anonymously reported that I had inappropriately accessed internal data. HR got involved. My boss benched me for 2 weeks while they investigated. I couldn't prove it, but I knew. I knew it was him. I never said anything because the evidence wasn't there. But after I returned to work, things were different. People whispered when I walked by. Elliot got promoted. I left the company 2 months later. I never saw him again. Until now. His name. On a lease. With my wife. I sat alone in the motel parking lot with the printed lease in my hands. Yeah, I printed it. I don't know why. Maybe holding it made it real. Maybe I thought it would be easier to set on fire if I needed to. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched old voicemail messages, listened to ones from Lana where she said things like, "We're solid, Curtis. We're okay. Things are just hard right now." Her voice was soft, familiar. She sounded like she meant it. She probably did, for the version of me that wasn't a liability to her new life. By morning, I had only one plan. I needed to see this place, this second home she was building behind my back. I needed to know if it was real, if she was actually living a double life, or if I'd gone completely insane and was inventing monsters that didn't exist. The address was in Midtown, in one of those up-and-coming areas that used to be factories and now have overpriced coffee and murals of butterflies and mental health slogans. I drove there in silence. No music, just my heartbeat and the hum of the road. The building was newer than I expected. Tall windows, modern gray stone, a little too much glass. It looked sterile, like the kind of place people move to when they're done pretending to care about cozy things. I parked across the street and waited. For 2 hours, nothing. Then a door opened, and there she was. Lana, hair tied back, sunglasses, a tote bag slung over one shoulder. She looked lighter, not in the physical sense, emotionally. She looked like someone who had shed a version of herself, someone who had stopped pretending. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. She laughed at something someone said behind her. Then he stepped out. Elliot. Same smug walk. Same stupid leather jacket he wore even when it was 80 degrees out. He said something, and she touched his arm. Not in a sexual way, in a familiar way. A domestic way, like they had done it 100 times before. They walked down the street, turned the corner, and disappeared. I didn't follow. I didn't move. I just sat there, paralyzed. Because in that moment, I realized something even worse than betrayal. They weren't hiding. They didn't care if I saw, because I had already been erased. I drove for hours after seeing them. Not to anywhere specific, just away. Away from the building, away from Midtown, away from the sharp image of Lana touching his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. I must have circled the loop 3 times before I realized I was just wasting gas and refusing to face silence. I checked into another cheap motel on the edge of town. No front desk conversation, just a key card and a buzzing light in the hallway. The room had wallpaper that was peeling at the corners, a dead spider in the lampshade, and a TV that hummed even when it was off. It felt like the perfect place to come undone. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my phone. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly, but I knew I wasn't done digging. I started scrolling through my camera roll. I thought maybe seeing photos of Lana and me would anchor me, remind me this wasn't all some long con, that there was something real once. But something strange happened as I scrolled. I realized how many of the photos were of her alone, posed in front of murals, sitting across from me at restaurants, sleeping on the couch, smiling in soft morning light, but rarely with me. In fact, I found only 5 photos in the last year where both of us were in the frame, and 3 of those were selfies I had to practically beg her to take. I never noticed it until now. The distance had been slowly stitched into the background of our lives, one quiet day at a time. That realization cracked something open in me. Because if the erasure was that slow, that careful, that precise, then maybe this wasn't just about Elliot. Maybe Lana's detachment had a longer timeline than I realized. Maybe I had missed signs because I had trained myself not to look for them. I suddenly remembered a night from 2 years ago, something I hadn't thought about since it happened. We were at a housewarming party for one of her friends from yoga, a guy named Trey. I didn't like him. Too familiar. Too many inside jokes with Lana. At one point that night, I walked into the kitchen and caught them laughing over something I hadn't heard. When they saw me, they stopped. Not abruptly, not awkwardly, but in that subtle, polished way that's practiced. Like turning off a faucet just before it overflows. I asked her about it later. She said I was being paranoid, that I was insecure, that I needed to trust her like an adult. So I let it go? Now, I wasn't so sure. I opened Facebook, a digital graveyard I hadn't visited in almost a year. I typed in Trey's name. His profile was private, but something caught my attention in his friends tab. Elliot Bray. They were friends. Of course they were. And suddenly, things started falling into place in ways that made my stomach twist. Because if Trey and Elliot knew each other, and Lana knew Trey before I even suspected Elliot of anything, then this wasn't a random affair. This wasn't some accidental reconnecting with an old coworker who just happened to be charming. This had layers, connections, threads. So I kept digging. I found old emails Lana had forwarded me back when we were still good, restaurant confirmations, shared calendar events, forwarded articles. I searched them for names. One came up. Jessie she had once described as her college roommate. Jessie was copied on an invite to Trey's party. Then I searched Jessie's name. Found a LinkedIn profile. Connections, Elliot Bray. What the hell was going on? I was starting to get the sense that I hadn't just been cheated on. I'd been recruited into a performance. My life, our marriage, it started to feel like the stage set of a play I didn't know I was acting in. I called the only person I could think of who might tell me the truth. My brother, Matt. We hadn't spoken in over a year. Long story. He didn't like Lana. Said something once that pissed me off, and I shut him out. I was loyal. Blindingly loyal. I picked my side and didn't look back. But now I was starting to think maybe he saw something I didn't. Maybe he always had. He didn't answer the first time. Or the second. But on the third call, he picked up. His voice was groggy. Curtis? You all right? I didn't even think before I said it. Did you know Lana was connected to Elliot? There was a pause on the line. Not long, but long enough to register. He exhaled slowly. Then, he said the one thing that pulled the floor out from under me. I didn't know if you'd ever ask. The silence that followed his words was worse than anything Lana had ever given me. I didn't know if you'd ever ask. Not, what are you talking about? Not, no. Man, I had no idea. Just that. That single sentence. Resigned, quiet. Like something you practice in the mirror when you've been waiting for too long to say it. I sat up straighter on the motel bed, the springs creaking under me. Matt? I said, slow, measured. What the hell does that mean? He didn't answer right away. I heard the rustle of fabric, like he was getting out of bed, maybe walking down a hallway, away from someone else who might be listening. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. Curtis, look, I wasn't sure if it was real. And even if it wasn't my place. My chest tightened. Wasn't your place to tell me my wife was sleeping with a guy who tried to ruin my career? No, he said, almost apologetically. It wasn't my place to tell you that your wife and Elliot knew each other before you even introduced them. Everything inside me went still. What? He sighed. You always thought they met at that holiday party, right? At your old job? Yeah, I said, though now my voice sounded smaller, thinner. Like a kid reciting something he just learned by heart. They didn't. I stared at the wall in front of me, not seeing anything. My ears buzzed like I was underwater. What are you talking about? They went to the same grad program. Same year. I found an old photo once, university mixer or something. Lana, Elliot, Trey, and a few others. All arm in arm, drunk, happy. I didn't show it to you because, I don't know. Maybe I was afraid of what you'd do. I felt like I was going to be sick. When was this? About 3 months after you got married. I was still on Instagram then. Lana was tagged in it, but untagged herself later. I only caught it because I was scrolling late and remembered the name. I stood up, pacing now, hand in my hair, heart pounding like a war drum. So you knew, this whole time, that they had a past, and said nothing. I tried, Curtis. I tried to hint at it. You remember that fight we had? That's what it was about. I said something about her being secretive. You blew up. Because I'd trusted her. I needed someone in my life to be a fixed point. And I'd picked her. I didn't just choose to love Lana. I chose to build my sanity around her. And now that structure was collapsing, fast. Matt wasn't done. There's more. Something weird. About 2 years ago, Mom told me Lana had called her, asked questions about your childhood. Specific stuff. Nothing bad, just odd. Like asking for dates. Names of teachers. She said it was for a surprise scrapbook or something. But the way she asked made Mom uncomfortable. Too clinical. I sat down again, this time slower. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. Why would she need to know that? No idea, Matt said. But I remember thinking, she already knows all that. So why dig again? And that's when the thought first hit me, cold and insane. Was she building a version of me somewhere else? I know how that sounds. Crazy. Desperate. Conspiratorial. But when your reality cracks open like a rotting floorboard, you start considering every creak as the beginning of collapse. And I remembered something. 2 weeks before the silence started, I saw her flipping through a journal she kept hidden in her nightstand. One I wasn't allowed to read. I caught a glimpse of a page. It looked like a list. Curtis's favorite things. Curtis's phrases. Curtis's habits, unconscious. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Thought maybe she was trying to reconnect with me. But now I wasn't so sure. Matt continued, his voice more serious. I didn't tell you any of this because I thought I was being paranoid. Thought maybe I was just projecting stuff. But if Elliot's back in the picture, if she moved in with him? Curtis, that's not random. My mouth was dry. So what are you saying? I'm saying, he replied, slowly. This might go deeper than just cheating. That night, I lay in bed fully clothed, every light off, my mind spinning like a machine overheating. If Lana had been connected to Elliot from the start, if their relationship predated me, then maybe none of it was real. Maybe I was just a piece on a board they'd been playing on for years. And the worst part? I didn't even know what the game was. I don't remember falling asleep. Just remember waking up to the kind of sharp, disorienting sunlight that makes motel blinds glow like cheap paper lanterns. The kind of morning light that feels like an accusation. Matt had texted me a few hours earlier. Just a screenshot. No explanation. I rubbed the sleep out of my eyes and stared at the image on my phone. A search result from a local self-storage facility website. The name listed on the lease? Lana M. Voss. My wife. My wife who, according to everything I knew, had never owned a storage unit. Especially not in a city she supposedly never visited. I texted him back. How did you find this? His reply came fast. Old invoice in Dad's garage. Long story. Just check it out. So I did. The address was in a half-forgotten industrial zone 25 minutes outside the city, wedged between a dead movie theater and an abandoned mattress outlet. Rows of corrugated steel doors, all sun-bleached and dented, stretched out like the ribs of something long buried. The air smelled like hot dust and rusted metal. The office was closed, holiday weekend, according to the sign, but the keypad at the gate still worked. Matt had sent me the code, too. Unit 191. Row D. I drove in slowly, heart pounding, windows down. I didn't know what I expected. A stack of old furniture? Childhood keepsakes? Leftover wedding decorations? What I found was different. The lock was old but functional. When I opened the unit, it let out a groan like something had just been disturbed after years of sleep. Inside, there were no boxes, no furniture, no mattress, just folders, dozens of them, labeled with dry, impersonal titles. March 2020, phone records. Curtis, bank history. Observation notes, phase 1. Voice logs. Behavioral curve, Curtis J. Voss. At first, I thought it was a joke. Some twisted prank. But the moment I opened the first folder, I knew it wasn't. Inside were printed screenshots of texts I had sent years ago, notes I had written to myself, transcripts of phone calls, not summaries, transcripts, word for word, time-stamped, annotated. Another folder held photographs, not the flattering kind, surveillance photos, me in parking lots, at the grocery store, sitting alone on park benches, eating lunch in my car. The kind of photos no one should ever have unless they're watching you without your knowledge. There was one of me at my mother's funeral. I'd been standing alone, head down, coat too big on me. I hadn't seen anyone taking pictures that day, but someone had. Someone who'd made it a priority. I had to sit down. There was a small fold-up camping chair against the wall. I collapsed into it, shaking, the air in the unit suddenly too still, too heavy. I grabbed the folder labeled Behavioral Curve and flipped through it. It was handwritten, not printed, and the handwriting was Lana's. I recognized the loops in her LS. The way she dotted her is with tiny slashes instead of circles. She'd kept a journal, tracking me like a science project. Day 19, withdrawal. Refused to discuss confrontation. Observed pacing, slight tremor in left hand. No escalation. Passive compliance maintained. Day 31, left keys on counter. No physical contact initiated for 13 days. Subject displays emotional resignation. Possible window for transition to Phase 3. Phase 3. I didn't even know there had been a Phase 1 or 2. My mouth went dry. It wasn't just an affair. It wasn't just a second apartment. It wasn't even just betrayal. It was research. I stood up too fast, the chair tipping over behind me. My hands were sweating. I grabbed the voice logs folder and found a flash drive taped to the inside cover. No label, just a red dot drawn on with permanent marker. I didn't have a laptop on me, but I knew I couldn't leave this behind. I shoved the flash drive and 3 of the most detailed folders into my backpack, locked the unit again, and backed away like I was leaving a crime scene. Because it felt like I was. Driving away, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting a car to start tailing me. No one did. Not yet. But for the first time in my life, I started to question if any of my choices had ever been my own. If maybe my routines, my reactions, even my breakdown, all of it, had been part of something I was never allowed to see. And now that I had seen it, I had no idea what they'd do to keep it hidden. I parked the car near a lake I used to fish at as a kid, the kind of place people forget exists until they need it. The water was still, shallow, green at the edges. I hadn't been back in years, maybe decades. It was quiet, empty, the kind of place that doesn't expect anything from you. I needed that. I sat in the front seat, laptop balanced on my knees, the flash drive plugged in, my thumb hovering over the play button. I wasn't ready, but I pressed it anyway. There was a hiss of static, then a voice. Not Lana's, not Elliot's. A man, calm, deliberate. This is subject file, Voss, Curtis James. Session 41. I froze. Session 41. A chair scraped. Then I heard another voice. My voice. Recorded without me knowing. Quiet, distant, like I was half asleep. What is this? Why are we doing this again? The man responded. Because repetition is clarity, Curtis. It's not about control. It's about understanding. You're not broken. You've been miswired. You've been repeating someone else's programming your whole life. I fast-forwarded. Different days. Different sessions. They weren't interrogations. They weren't torture. They were therapy. In some twisted, off-the-record, underground kind of way. And Lana was there too. Curtis needs to know the truth gently, her voice said in one log. He's not ready to be told everything at once. His father made him believe silence meant peace. But silence is violence to someone who needs answers. Her voice was calm, steady, not cruel. It didn't make sense. Why would she say that? The files kept going, data logs, behavioral patterns, emotional forecasts. At some point, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't a study of me as a target. It was a rescue plan. And then I found the final audio file. Just her voice. No metadata. No number. No intro. Curtis, she said softly. If you're listening to this, you found it. And I'm sorry it had to be this way. I didn't want you to learn like this. But I also couldn't let you keep living under someone else's fingerprints. You think I left you. That I betrayed you. But I didn't. I pulled you out. She took a breath. I could hear emotion in it. The kind she never showed me face to face. You don't remember the worst of it. Your mind won't let you. But it's there, Curtis. All of it. The surveillance. The manipulation. The company using you like a test subject for behavioral algorithms. They mapped your instincts. Your habits. That job you lost. That wasn't incompetence. That was design. Elliot, he's not who you think he is. He was assigned to your trajectory years before you met me. He just didn't expect I'd get in the way. The recording crackled slightly. You weren't supposed to trust me. That's what they counted on. But you did. You loved me. Even when I made it impossible. And because you did, I was able to get you out. This file, this unit, these notes, they're your breadcrumbs. Your map. I had to make you question everything so you could finally start seeing clearly. You're not crazy. You're not broken. You're just waking up. And it's going to be hell, but at the end of it, you'll be you. For the first time. The audio stopped. I sat there for a long time. The water outside didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just breathed. For what felt like the first time in months. Maybe years. Because now, everything made sense. The silence. The shadows. The plans. It wasn't an attack. It was a clean break. A jailbreak from a life I thought I built, but had really just inherited from someone else's design. Lana didn't destroy me. She unplugged me. In that moment, I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't even miss her. I just felt something I hadn't felt since I was a teenager sitting at this same lake, fishing with a stick and a piece of string. Peace. And in that silence, in that moment, I realized this wasn't the end of the story. It was the prologue.